webinar and I see now it's okay. Sorry for interrupting.
That's fine. Okay. So please let me know when I can start.
You can start now. It's
okay.
Fine.
So hi everybody. I'm very happy to be with such a large group of people today. Many of you, I see some friends and colleagues here. They know me. I'm a very social person, and it is a challenge for me staying and working from home. But this is life, and we have to do it. So, hello. Thanks, Zori, for your introduction. I will just add a couple of things about myself. My name is Neli Doncheva. I work for WWF Bulgaria. And by education, I'm a forester, but by heart, I'm conservationist. And I really enjoy my job, what I do. Maybe this is one of the reasons that I started to be more and more involved in the restoration of riparian forest habitats program run by WWF in Bulgaria. And today I will tell you more about our experience. Of course, I'd like to start with some more general stuff about the riparian forests. And now I'm sharing the presentation on my screen. Let's see how it will work technically. Please let me know if everything is okay, and if someone can tell me, can you see the first slide?
Pictures, Nelly.
No?
See pictures on your computer.
You see pictures on my computer. Okay, let's try again. Can you see now?
No.
Okay, another trial. Sorry about this.
It's still the folder with the picture.
And now?
No.
Ah.
Can you start the presentation?
I'm trying to do it. Like the last time we tested, and no. Okay, one more time. Now? Now?
Just wait for a second, please.
Okay. What do you see now?
Your pictures.
Oh no.
Neli, do you use two screens or one?
I use only one screen. It's yeah. Okay, I'll stop sharing again and try one more time. So in the menu I have share, and yes, I'm selecting
Neli,
the folder.
do you have the presentation open? The PowerPoint, do you have it opened?
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
It's okay. It works.
It worked now?
Yes.
Oh, thanks God for this. Okay, so still see it?
Yes.
On full screen or no?
No, in full screen. Yes, now
in full screen. Okay, sorry about this, guys. I'm not the best technician, but anyway, let's start. So today we will talk about forest restoration, and I'm going to share with you the experience from the last years in WWF Bulgaria about restoring riparian forests particularly. But before starting with this, I would like to briefly mention what is the difference of the different terms used. And the most widespread definitions and terms that are used are related to reforestation, afforestation, forest restoration, and forest landscape restoration. But there are some slight or bigger differences in them. When we speak about reforestation, we should keep in mind that this is a natural or intentional restocking of trees in areas where forests existed in the past, but they have been destroyed. When we talk about afforestation, this is a process which actually adds to the forest cover in areas that have not be in forest in recent history, let's say bare areas. Forest restoration refers to actions to restore ecological processes which aim to recover the forest structure, the ecological functioning, and biodiversity. And forest landscape restoration is a planned process to regain ecological integrity and enhance human well-being in deforested or degraded landscapes. And it's about larger areas, actually. So forest restoration is a challenging and long-term effort. I would like to emphasize on this. It's also an expensive effort, which requires very detailed planning, implementation, and monitoring. And the purpose of forest restoration is to restore degraded forest to its original state, which is to establish the presumed structure, productivity, and species diversity of the forest originally present at a particular site. Why restoring exactly riparian forests? In order to answer to this question, maybe we should briefly speak about their values and benefits. I know that many of you are familiar with this, but I'm going to briefly mention this. Riparian forests have huge ecological significance. They play an important role both to nature and to humans. And among their many functions, we can mention the following. On first place, they are preserving plant and animal species by ensuring shelter, places for breeding, for food. Riparian forests and vegetation serve as a main corridor for wildlife. A great number of animals move along it during their natural migrations. Lowlands were once covered with vast continuous forests, but today lowland forests are fragmented and in very small areas. I have seen this not only in Bulgaria, but also in Greece, in Czech Republic, and in other countries in the Central and Eastern Europe. And this fragmentation is really, really huge. So the existing small patches of riparian forests are dispersed among the large areas of agriculture and urbanization facilities. They're often interrupted by roads and other constructions, and thus create impassable obstacles for forest wildlife. On the other hand, river corridors are often the only connection between isolated forests, and thus the survival of a large number of plant and animal species depend on them. Therefore, the destruction of riparian forests leads to a decrease in species diversity. For example, there is a direct correlation between the decreased number of old trees and the number of the nesting birds. Riparian trees are preferred for nesting and roosting sites for many species of birds. Heron and cormorant colonies in particular are commonly found along rivers in Bulgaria, I believe also in Greece, at least what I've seen there. And also black storks, a species that nests mainly on cliffs, but also nests in more remote riparian forests. Kingfishers, these particularly beautiful small blue birds, often perch on branches hanging above the river, as they provide better observation points and allow them to hunt fish with less energy costs. That's why the clearing and cutting of trees on river banks results in a decrease in species diversity and impact insect populations, which is a food source for many fish species. In larger streams and rivers, the area along the banks provides habitats for species of small fishes. Their survival depends on insects and the plant particles that fall into the water from the river banks. This is why the riparian forests and trees are so important for the biodiversity. On the other hand, they have particular regulation service on the water flow, and they prevent the risk of flooding. One of the natural functions of floodplain areas, including riparian forests, is to retain water and sediment from the watershed, especially in times of flooding. When a river overflows, for example, it also floods neighboring territories. And when forests are present, They function as a natural water retainer. They slow down the release of the water and diminish the risk of flooding. Overflowing river banks in alluvial habitats allow water to seep into the soil over a larger area, and the root systems of trees make the soil porous, thus additionally increasing its absorption potential and decreasing the runoff rate. When we speak about the values of riparian forests, we should mention that they prevent the banks of the rivers from erosion. For example, root systems stabilize bank sediments and mitigate erosion processes. In riparian territories, forests slow down the flooding during high water and facilitates the sediment disposals. Reduction of pollution. The root system of the trees along the river banks serve as a filter that can absorb a large amount of biogenic elements before they reach the river. Common alder, Alnus glutinosa, for example, which is a typical species of riparian forests, is impressive. It is among the tree species with the highest capacity to absorb biogenic elements from groundwaters, such as nitrogen or phosphorus, etc. In case of the excess of these elements in the water, this leads to eutrophication and die of fishes and other water organisms. Even a very narrow strip of riparian alder forest, such as 10 or 15 meters, can filter out over 80% of the percent of the biogenic pollutants that would otherwise flow into the river. Of course, we should mention that forests play a crucial role in providing clean air. Forests provide also phytoncides, these organic compounds that can slow down the development of pathogenic bacteria, fungi, and other organisms, or eliminate them altogether. And additionally, forests have a noise reduction effect. Also, forests are a source of natural products such as medicinal plants. You can see here the one of the photos with the flower with the white flowers, which is Leucoioma aestivum. I think the English name is summer snowflake, which is very important in terms of medicinal plant. It's also protected and it's typical species which can be found in riparian areas. We should not forget that riparian forests are also composed of very different tree species and also lianas. So some of them which have medicinal purposes and are used like medicinal plants are the common alder, the field elm, the Tatarian maple, the common hornbeam. From the climbing plants, we should mention here Smiox excelsa, Clematis vitalba, Hedera helix as well, although a poisonous one, it is used as a medicinal plant, and yeah, many others. Tourism and recreation, hobbies and sports, riparian forests are more and more popular destinations in our days because they provide excellent possibilities for recreation, for leisure and nature-oriented tourism. Many recreational complexes and facilities have emerged close to the beautiful forests along the lower courses of Bulgaria's greater rivers. Just for example, for those of you who know a little bit about Bulgaria, Baltata Managed Reserve protects a riparian forest near the popular Albena resort close to the Black Sea coast. But it's not the only one, of course. However, we should mention here Kamchia and Roputamu reserves and Veleka River in Stranja Nature Park. In terms of hobbies and sports, riparian forests are gaining popularity for the opportunities they provide for practicing bird watching, wildlife photography, rafting, kayaking, and other sports associated with the rivers. Fishing and hunting We should not forget about this too. Fish numbers in a river depends to a great extent on the riparian vegetation. It provides shelter and spawning grounds. And in summer, fish prefers oxygen and waters which are rich in oxygen. And the higher the water temperature, the lower its oxygen level is. That's why the water temperature is highly dependent on the shading provided by riparian forests. Also, the visibility in the water is important, and it is higher in water that are filtered by vegetation. That is why also anglers consider spots with an abundance of shrubs and tree branches hanging over the water the best for fishing. Riparian forests attract a substantial diversity of game species too. Some of Bulgaria's best hunting estates are located along the Danube and other rivers flowing into the Black Sea. And the main game species there are the red deer, roe deer, wild boar, etc. And of course, the aesthetical values, the inspiration values of the riparian forests, even some traditions are associated with riparian forests as well. Maybe you know the Palm Sunday, which is 1 week before Easter celebrations. During the Palm Sunday in Bulgaria, people usually go to the churches with branches of willows because we don't have palms yet in Bulgaria. And anyway, this is just an example of the traditional use of some of the typical riparian forest species. And now we come to the threats and problems which are facing riparian forests. And this also answers to the question, why restoring riparian forests? Well, riparian forests have been heavily damaged in the past and also in our days too. Maybe one of the reasons to be a priority habitat under the Habitat Directive is associated also with the huge speed with which riparian forests have been destroyed. They are strongly associated with rivers and thus have a naturally limited distribution. And the problems faced by riparian forests are mainly associated with the loss of area and with changes in their structure and functions. Historically, riparian forests have been heavily affected and destroyed for clearing of area for agricultural purposes and use, replacement with hybrid poplar and willow plantations for intensive timber production as well. In our days, riparian forests and vegetation are affected because of construction of hydropower plants, riverbed corrections, excavation of sand and gravel, which subsequently lead to dramatic changes in the flow regime and to bank erosion, also to lowering the level of the underground waters, which has a really huge impact on the neighboring vegetation and riparian forests. Also, another problem is related to unauthorized and improperly conducted loggings. The invasion of alien species such as Acernegundo, Fraxinus pennsylvanica, Morpha fruticosa, Ailanthus autissima. This is becoming more and more a huge problem for the good structure and condition of the riparian forests in Bulgaria. I don't know particularly about Greece and Czech Republic, but I believe there are examples of riparian forests also affected by these invasive species there. Of course, the water pollution is not a problem, and the dump sites. And we should not forget about the climate redization and the change in the water balance. We are all facing the climate changes in our days. They affect very much riparian forests because of the close link between the water and the forest. In recent decades, clearance of dead and fallen trees from riverbeds is a serious problem, at least in Bulgaria. There is such a practice by the municipalities in many lowland and urbanized areas. The goal of this activity is presented that in such a way, taking out the fallen trees will reduce the risk of flooding. However, in practice, what happens is that trees which are healthy and standing in very good condition are being cut. And this is this actually contributes to the risk of flooding. Healthy trees that fortify river banks are being felled, and this leads to destruction of forests, which are of key importance for the river ecosystems. In these cases, the only trees which should be removed from the riverbeds are those that truly block the river and impede its flow during extreme water levels. However, we can talk more about this, but it's time to discuss and focus more on the conservation measures regarding riparian forests and finally approach the main topic, restoration of riparian forests. In Bulgaria, I have to say that riparian habitats are poorly represented within protected territories at the national level. And some of the riparian forests are declared as protected areas and reserves, but their percentage is not, and their area is not enough. Another tool to ensure protection of riparian forests in Bulgaria is that 5 of the natural habitat types listed in Annex 1 of the Habitat Directive include riparian forests. Here on the screen, on the slide, you can see that these are the alluvial forests with Taunus glutinosa and Fraxinus excelsior, which are priority habitat for conservation. It is marked with asterisk, or with this sign. In Bulgaria, less than 0.5% of all forests is the area of the alluvial forests. But their condition also in Europe is not good at all, is not favorable at all. And this was the reason that WWF started to restore especially this type of riparian forests. The other riparian forest habitats are riparian mixed forest of Quercus rubus and Ulmus laevis, Salix alba and Populus alba galleries, Platanus orientalis, which is also typical for Greece. I've seen their really beautiful galleries from this species. Southern riparian galleries and thickets is the 5th habitat. So all of these 5 habitats of riparian forests are in unfavorable conservation status. And this is a sign for us that we should focus our attention and efforts on restoring these forests. I'm gonna present now a case study from Bulgaria, from my country. It is about restoring riparian forests in 2 particular Natura 2000 sites. This was become possible thanks to the financial support of the European Union through the LIFE program of the European Union. Many of you know about it, I'm sure. And this project has been implemented in the period 2014-2019. We learned a lot during the implementation of this project. On the map, you can see with the red spots the model areas. One is along the Danube River in the northern part of Bulgaria, in the project area in Marten Ryahovo, which is Natura 2000 site. And the other objects where we worked were along the biggest inland river of Bulgaria, Marica River, in the south central part of the country. And it was challenging project, but finally we succeeded. And how everything started. We decided to focus on this priority habitat for conservation. Also because the European Union LIFE program provides co-financing of 75% for such types of projects. As you know, and many of you experienced this problem for environmental organizations, even for some other state organizations, the co-financing is an issue. So we have focused on the priority habitat to work with. So we have identified the habitat type, we have identified the locations and the accessibility to this specific area. This is also very important. It is important to identify the land use boundaries and the ownership and the size of the area where you want to work. The ownership is especially important because you cannot just start working on somebody's land. You need to have an agreement with the owners of the land. And this also helps to identify the stakeholders to engage within the whole process, to work in partnerships with them. It's very, very important to create a feeling of trust and mutuality from the very beginning. We were lucky to work with the Executive Forest Agency in Bulgaria and also with two other partners from the forest sector, the Regional Forest Directorate in Ruse and the Regional Forest Directorate in Plovdiv, and also with two forest enterprises on which particular territories we've been restoring forests. We've worked also with one municipality in the southern central part of Bulgaria, municipality Marica. So it was a very good exchange of experience and building partnerships also. And we started with planning the actions, three particular type of actions: restoration by planting saplings of typical for riparian forests species in Reka Marica Natura site. We worked there on nearly 13 hectares with 5 species, which is not traditional forest practice. Usually foresters in Bulgaria work, when they afforestate, they work with 1 or 2, 3 species. It is much more complex to work with 5, 6, or 7 species, but I will speak about this later on. The second action was focused on the restoration by planting saplings along the Danube River on nearly 10 hectares. We selected 2 species to work with: Populus alba, Populus nigra and Salix alba. Actually, mentioning Populus alba, I must say that at the beginning we wanted to work with Populus alba as well, the wild poplar. But apparently we discovered that it is very difficult to find saplings from Populus alba in the forest nurseries in Bulgaria. So we had to reorient the choice of and finally choose to other species. So what is important when working with restoration is the preparatory actions, to be very detailed in planning, but always keep in mind that plans are something that can be changed depending on many, many factors, as we are experiencing in our days too. In any case, negotiation and agreements with owners are very important. I have mentioned already that you cannot start restoring forest habitat or whatever habitat on someone's land without having agreement with the owner. Also, to complete all legal procedures and issuing approvals and permits by the relevant authorities, it can take much more time than initially planned. In our case, we have planned to be ready with all this bureaucracy for 3 months, but it took like nearly 1 year to complete all legal procedures. And when you work in Natura 2000 site, in the case of Bulgaria, we need to have permit from the regional environmental inspectorates, which is a must, and it takes time. Also, the development of technological plans and schemes for the restoration activities. They are also sometimes quite long in the as a time. I mean, on one hand, you have to carefully choose the right species and the methods for soil preparation, for the other operations on the field. So take enough time for this. Like 1 month is not enough. I would recommend that if you are planning to start such activity, to have at least 3 months for developing the technological plans and schemes. And of course, they are associated with traveling on the field, taking some measures, etc. Another important preparatory action is to start organizing the production of saplings and seedlings. Of course, the best case scenario is to work with local origins, which means that you collect seeds from trees from the particular species that have been selected to work with in the area where you will be restoring. And here in the photo, you see me collecting seeds from black adder. And this also takes time. You need to receive a permit from the State Forest Management Unit that you can collect seeds. Then you have to bring the seeds to the seed control station where certain measurements are done, like, for example, to assess the viability, the germination potential of the seeds, etc. And then to find specialized forest nursery where to produce the saplings. This is also very important. The forest nurseries should be selected based on their existing facilities and the methods they use, because of course the best is to work with good quality of the seedlings and saplings. And this also takes time, 1 year or 2 years, depending on the plan. Subcontracting specialized companies with adequate technique and experience might also be a challenge. This type of labor is not very attractive. And in the case of Bulgaria, in our case, it was difficult to find reliable specialized company to help us with the soil preparation, to have the necessary equipment and machineries, and to carry out the field works. So the real work, let me show you some photos now from the places when we started the restoration. This picture is taken near Asenovgrad in the south central part of Bulgaria, in Reka Marica Natura site. And this is how the area of the restoration looked like. As you see, this is a poplar plantation. And these poplars have been cut. You know that hybrid poplars are grown with the main goal of fast production of biomass. And the way they're managed is very close to the agricultural crops. So you plant the hybrid poplars, you put fertilizers, you water them, you prune them, and then on the 8th or the 12th year, cut them all. So we've managed to negotiate with the State Forest Management Unit, Asenovgrad, to set aside nearly 3 hectares where we intended to restore the riparian forests. And after cutting these hybrid poplars, then we made soil preparation. In this particular case, we used heavy machinery because this is site-specific. And it is important to secure the vitality of the saplings at the site when the planting has to take place. We have planted the saplings in spring. And the lesson learned is that it is better to plant during autumn, the end of the autumn. We've planted these saplings in the spring of 2016. And at the beginning, when we made the first inventory of the survival of the saplings, we assessed that 70% of all the saplings were in very good condition. This was the beginning of June. When doing the inventory of the survival of the saplings in the autumn, it was a real disaster. Almost 80% of all the saplings were gone. And this happened because 2016 in Bulgaria was very dry year with very high temperatures. And in this particular part of Bulgaria, the south central part of Bulgaria, there were like 3 months without any single drop of water, nothing, with temperatures of above 30 degrees. So that was one of the lessons learned for us. And the other lesson learned was that despite doing some watering, you have to carefully choose what type of watering you should apply. We were not very lucky with the company that we subcontracted to help us with the activity. And what they did was to water by like raining, you know, using these facilities that disperse water and it falls like rain directly on the leaves of the young trees. And they did that during the day, not very early in the morning when the temperatures are low, but about lunchtime. And what happened was that 80% of all the saplings and seedlings were gone. Here in this particular area, we have planted trees from Populus alba, Salix alba, Alnus glutinosa, Quercus robur, and Ulmus. Here you see on this picture saplings from Alnus glutinosa, and this is the traditional way to handle them until you really plant them into the holes in the ground. For some of the large-scale saplings, for example, for Populus nigra and for Salix alba, we had to use this specialized machinery because, as I mentioned, they are large-scale saplings with a height of about 2 meters, and they need to be planted in large holes. And yeah, this is another photo which shows the type of planting, nothing specific, traditional way here. Something important and interesting to share with you is that we not only planted trees in these areas where we selected to work and to restore riparian forest, but we have also applied the so-called Saarland method for removal of the alien invasive species. This method has the name of the Saarland province in Germany because it was invented for the first time there with the main purpose of creating high quality stems of timber. But we modified it and used it as a method for removal of invasive trees. And how it works? Well, it works like that. You see this guy there who uses something like machete and a chain in order to cut the transfer of the water and minerals and soils from the crown of the tree to the root system of the tree. This method is more close to nature and it can be applied during the nesting season, for example, because it is not associated with huge noise and disturbing interventions for the animals, for the organisms. This is the result of this use of the chain, and this is how the stem of the invasive tree looks like. And for a period of 4 to 5 years, these trees that have been treated by the Saarland method, they die off, and it's kind of a natural way to clean the riparian forests from this invasive alien species. The other way of applying the Saarland method is just by breaking the smaller trees And yeah, this is how it looks finally. I have to say that at the present moment, we are pretty happy with the results of this Saarland method. It is less costly comparing to the other types of removal of alien invasive species. It doesn't apply chemicals which are forbidden for use, pesticides or herbicides. They are forbidden to be used in Natura 2000 sites. And our objects of restoration were located in Natura 2000 sites. So we had to find an appropriate methods to remove the alien species. Once you have planted the areas, then you need to take care of the young riparian forests. We decided to work with young children and with volunteers from the local areas, the children from local schools, because this has an added value, and it brings actually a knowledge and understanding among the local people about the value of the riparian forests. And through the kids, we've managed to reach also their parents. So it was a very, very good example. And it was really exciting for the kids from the local schools and their teachers, but it was exciting also for the foresters who were with us on the field, and they've managed to interact with these kids and tell them more about the forest management, about the forest profession. So I believe it was of mutual benefit for all the parties involved. And of course, we organized some games for the kids in order to learn more about different species, about riparian forests, and it was also a fun. So everybody were happy at the end. So finally, the results from this project, you see the number of the hectares here, but it's not the only important thing. As you see, we worked on small areas. These were not large areas. We worked on smaller scale because we wanted to create demonstration sites where we can exchange knowledge afterwards. And we included these model sites into a study trip program that we have implemented the last year. And we brought stakeholders from different stakeholders who are involved in a way with forestations, reforestations. We went there and visited these objects together with people from the forest management units, from people from other NGOs, from local active groups who are doing some afforestations, with people from the park administration. I must say it was very, very beneficial for everybody. We discussed the lessons learned, the challenges, what worked well, what didn't work. So now these areas are really like demonstration sites, and they are being used also by other partners in the project. Moving forward about lessons learned, I have already mentioned some of them, but let me continue a little bit with this. Testing of different approaches is something important. We have to be flexible, we have to be adaptive during the implementation of such programs. For example, we discovered that planting a higher number of saplings on denser rows mimics in a way the natural processes. In this type of forest, the natural regeneration with high density in groups is pretty normal. It's not like the traditional afforestation. So by planting on a dense scheme, we recreate conditions that are closer to the nature, and allow for the natural processes of self-thinning and selection of the most adaptable and strong and resilient individuals, saplings. In turn, this leads to better chances of recovery for this type of forests, especially for riparian forests. This worked very well. Another lessons learned is Well, the riparian forest restoration is costly. The planting of saplings is very costly activity. The soil preparation is costly activity, and the additional measures you need to take, for example, measures against vandalism, because if you work in areas which are located closely to settlements, then the risk of having vandalism is quite high. I'll give you an example later on again. So it is costly. I have mentioned here that for 1 acre, it can cost between 1,000 and 2,000 euro, comparing to the traditional afforestation, where the prices are between 500 to 700 euro per acre. Unpredictable droughts and floodings also can pose a serious risk, and it may raise the cost. It may require, like in our case, to produce additionally planting material, saplings, and plant them to replace the individuals that died off. Scale of the activities. Until sufficient experience in the restoration of alluvial forests is gained, it is risky to plan for large-scale restorations. That's why we prefer to work on small dimension, on smaller areas, but first to learn the lessons and then to be able to adapt and apply on larger areas. We are still learning because there is very, very few examples and very few experience in restoration of riparian forests. Also, they are so different from one to another, from site to site, from one case to another case. So work on smaller scale. Invasive species, that's a huge problem. In the initial stage of creating young plantations of shade-tolerant tree species, for example, like the oak, the European oak, Quercus robur, the false indigo bush or Amorpha, which is an invasive species, can have a positive effect. This is what we learned, because it creates like a shade around the seedlings or saplings from the oak. And from the first years, it has some positives. Experience shows that in the beginning, Amorpha can protect the oak saplings from sun, can provide the necessary shading, as I've mentioned, and subsequently the oak seedlings outgrow the bush. An effective methodology against the species is the maintaining of dense canopy, because Amorpha cannot sustain dense canopy of the plantation, and slowly moves away. Flooding also affects negatively because it brings seeds from invasive species. So we have to take care about this. And to mention it again, no herbicides are allowed to be used in Natura 2000 sites. Flooding, especially typical for the areas around Danube. And the experience also from other projects shows that flooding for up to 3 months is okay for some tree species such as oak or black poplar, white willow, and elm. They can survive, but this is not the case for the rest of the species typical for riparian forests. Acorns or saplings, what to use? Well, both have their positives and negatives. On one hand, the acorns serve as a food for wild boars, for badgers, and if you use acorns and seed them, at some point they can be eaten. On the other hand, by seeding acorns of oak, they are much more adapted afterwards to the local conditions. So it's again case specific, and yeah, sometimes it's a matter of risking, but carefully assess the risk in advance. If the area is full of wild boars, then better use saplings of oak instead of acorns. I will continue with the lessons learned a little bit more, but they're more in the social aspect, these lessons learned that I'm gonna talk about now. This is another area where WWF is restoring riparian forest. It is located again in near Marica River, along Marica River, in the south central part of Bulgaria. It is nearly 30 acres, and we work there with 7 or even 8 species. We plant black poplar, white willow, European oak, Aunus glutinosa, elm, Platanus orientalis as well, and Fraxinus. This time we have managed to secure local origin for all the saplings we produced, which is really great. And I want to thank my colleagues from the WWF Forest team for being so devoted to this, because also it requires a work during the weekends to go out, sometimes with your family, sometimes with your friends, and collect the seeds from the particular trees that you need to produce saplings from. So building trust among local people and authorities is very important. This can help you very much for the successful results of the restoration work. In this case of restoration, we work on an area which is owned by the municipality. So we had to meet the mayor, we had to negotiate with the municipality and finally come to an agreement that they will dedicate these 30 acres for restoration of riparian forests. It was not very difficult because the mayor is quite smart man, and he saw the positives, the benefits for the local population, for the governance, the local governance. So we've come to an agreement, and afterwards we have even organized a couple of open air events together with the municipality. And usually we count on municipality to help us in the cases of problems on the site. For example, there are local people who have cattle, and the cattle pass through the site that we selected for restoration. They just go there and graze, and we had to meet the owners of these cows, cattle, to discuss with them and to ask them not to do so. Also, to be sure that we are on the safe side, we have installed an electric fence there. And we needed, of course, the permit for this on behalf of the municipality. Another important partner for you can be also the responsible business, responsible companies. In our case, this project is supported by Mondi, which is a pulp and paper company. It is not a Bulgarian one, it's an international company, and they have decided to be responsible to environment. So they also help us for ensuring financial support for this restoration. It is close to their factory in Stambuliski, so this is a good opportunity for their employees to join us during some of the voluntary actions we organize there. Ask for help is another important lesson learned. We ask for help experts. Sometimes we really don't know how to solve one or another problem. That's why we discuss with our colleagues, our forest colleagues, but not only foresters, other experts as well. And because we have limited financial resources, we ask for voluntary work. We ask volunteers to help us. Usually people are very supportive and positive when it comes to planting trees. But this is not the only help we need from them. Sometimes you need people to help you with eradication of the invasive species, or with watering, or with other work on the field. Like in this case, the first and the initial step was to clean from rubbish, from waste, because it was a dumping site, part of the area. So we organized a couple of voluntary actions, and we started with cleaning. And of course, people wanted more to plant trees, but sometimes you need their help for other activities. Anyway, I have to say we were very lucky. There was a huge response from the local people, from companies like IT companies and other specialists which are not closely linked to the nature, to the field. They stay in the office the whole day, so they are really happy when they have an option to go out and do something on fresh air. I've mentioned vandalism a couple of times. Here on one of the photos, the upper right photo, you can see this is a picture from the camera that we have installed together with the municipality on the restoration site. And we have installed this camera to be able to see what is happening there when we are not there, because we can't stay 24 hours per day and watching the site. And this is how we discovered that the electro fence that we have installed has been destroyed by, in this case, by children from the local settlement. But anyway, sometimes cameras can be very, very useful. And afterwards, you can identify the people that did that and go and talk to them, but also go for some penalties, as it is regulated by law. You can't just go and destroy whatever you want. Anyway, so this is about vandalism. Of course, it is happening, and it depends very much on the particular persons. It is important to be transparent, to speak out, to inform people and raise their awareness. Some people do not understand and afraid of riparian forests. Some people still believe that riparian forest means flooding, which is exactly the opposite. That's why you have to go and talk to the people. Sometimes these are old people, people without any knowledge of forestry, of restoration, afforestation, whatever. So you have to find the right language to talk to them and persuade them that this is actually for their good, and this will help them in many ways and will not cause floodings. Of course, we learned the lesson that we should not take anything for granted, and that our plans can change anytime. So we have to be adaptive, we have to be flexible. And one of the most important is to enjoy what you do to be successful. Really enjoy the work. It helps a lot. It's really rewarding exercise. And I think, oops, sorry. Here I have placed several links for you where you can learn in very many details about the experience so far with restoration of riparian forests, because it is not possible in 1 hour to talk about everything. So you can check there in English these materials, and there is also one very nice movie about riparian forests with nice photos and nice explanation. You can watch it, especially now, since many of you are staying home and sometimes maybe boring. And yeah, photo credits. Thanks to everyone who helped me with their photos. And something important to mention, you see the link here, edu.parks.bg. There is an English section, but there is also a section in Bulgarian, in Greek and Czech language. So this is the site of the Future Environmentalists. It's a learning platform, actually. There are many resources and materials uploaded there, videos, presentations, etc., on different topics. So you are invited all to check this out and find something useful for you. And I want to thank to you for your attention and maybe open the time for questions and answers.
Thank you, Neli. I would like to tell that in this website we will put the recording of this lecture and everybody can see it there. And Neli, for the questions, there is a chat box where you can open it and see all the questions that the participants asked during your presentation. Could you see it? Neli? Neli, unmute yourself.
Yes, I muted and yes, I did that. Yeah, okay, I see it now. Let's see. So I start from the first, do not worry. Yeah, I have some technical difficulties. Sorry, guys, I'm learning. Hi, can anyone tell me what is the name of the species that is one of the most efficient in absorbing chemical elements? I've missed it. This is Alnus glutinosa, black alder. This is the name of the species. Yeah, somebody answered, okay. Somebody wrote it in Latin, okay. Thank you. You're so advanced. Avenaba, this must be in some other language that I don't know. Maritsa River in Greek is called Evros. Yes, it's true, I know. I made a non-successful trial to visit the delta of Maritsa the beginning of March, unfortunately, to enjoy some bird watching there, but next time perhaps. How big was the spatial scale of the Saarland method, and wasn't there any danger of an insect epidemic, a secondary invasion through high temperatures and drought, in addition with the death of large amount of invasive species? In extent, wouldn't that affect your seedlings also? Well, how big was the scale? The scale was like 30 hectares along the Danube and 5 hectares along Maritsa River. This was the area where we applied the Saarland method. It was applied in the mid of 2016. And so far, during the monitoring we are doing regularly, we didn't see any invasion by insects, any insects or fungus, not really. So Nelly, can you paste the links here? Okay, Zori, can you paste the links there in the chat box? Or no, you don't have the presentation. Okay, I'll do it right now. And another question, could you elaborate much more about how did you get in touch with owners and make agreements with them about the collaboration? Yeah, okay, this is case by case. In the case of the LIFE project that I have presented to you, it was easier because we had as partners the owners of the land, the foresters, the forest management units, the forest directorates. So it was easy. They were partners of the project. And we had a common goal of restoring the areas. In the other case, with the Stamburiski near Maritsa, the second one, we had to approach the municipality. They were not partners. There were not a particular project about this. So we just called them. We explained what it's all about. We made a face-to-face meeting with the mayor and with employees of the local administration. And it was a pretty fast decision on behalf of the local municipality, I would say, but they have seen what are the benefits for them of having these restoration actions there and restoring these forests. Of course, it is related to better image among the local population because people are always complaining that the forests are being cut and nobody is planting. On the other hand, they also saw this as a potential for strengthening the local communities and focusing on the positive things. So we were very lucky, and we are still lucky with this municipality. Of course, during the times of elections, you never know. The mayor can be changed, a new one might come, and then you don't know if the new the new governance will be also so positive as the old one. But I think people are generally positive about afforestations. Let's use this term right now. Yeah, people like to plant trees. Okay. Does anyone would like to ask a question and not type in the messenger box?
If you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself and ask.
Ah, there is another question. Okay. Ah, no, this is it. Ah, the Quercus robur. Could you also share some main lessons about Quercus robur in this case? Well, yes. It's not only about Quercus robur, but also about other species that we used to plant. During this winter, many of them have been used as a food by the local rabbits. And this was a huge problem for us. Because during the winter, especially when the food for the wild hares is the exact English term that I should use. The food for the wild hares is less and they eat what they find. So many of the saplings were grazed. We will see what will happen next. Some of them will survive, some will not survive, but anyway. The lessons learned about the Quercus robur is that it is good to work both with seeds and with one-year saplings. With seeds, because once they germinate and they start growing, they are much more adaptive and resilient towards droughts and other unfavorable climatic conditions. On the other hand, as I told you, seeds are very attractive and can be eaten, but this also applies for the young saplings. So a mixture of both gives you better chances just to mitigate the risk somehow and have more options. This is about the Quercus robur. And the other thing is that maybe I forgot to mention that we have collected manually the acorns together with Costa, who is here now and is listening and watching, although I'm sure he also would like to maybe share some lessons learned. I'll give him the floor to do so if he wants. Costa, would you like to mention something that I'm missing? Some lesson learned that I have not recalled and not mentioned.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity, but I really cannot think at the moment of the things we have missed. We tried with the acorns two main approaches, planting seedlings and planting acorns this spring. The previous experience from Asenovgrad, Gushtoru, Valdaya showed that planting acorns in area in which wild boar is not present or with low density gives quite good results. And about the collecting and storing the acorns, we keep them in the storage of tree nursery in Vukorsko, which is Sofia Forestry, southwestern state enterprise. And that's from me for now. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Costa. Thank you very much. And since we are speaking about nurseries, there is one question. Was the nurseries that you used for your seedling near the reforestation area? No, they were not close to the reforestation area. But actually, we decided to work with this nursery Vukorsko, which is situated close to Sofia, because it is very well equipped and they have the most modern technique for production of container saplings and seedlings. This is important because the quality of the planting material is very, very important as well. Unfortunately, forest nurseries in Bulgaria are not in very good condition in our days. They have been very popular in the past, where afforestation was one of the main activities during the 40s, 50s, 60s years of the last century. But in our days, there are few specialized forest nurseries. Of course, it is better if you can use a forest nursery close to the restoration site, because the planting material will be much more adapted to the local conditions.
If I can add, only the poplars and willow were produced pretty close in Pazarchik.
Yeah, right. The poplars and the willows were produced in a specialized nursery for production of fast-growing tree species, the one in Pazarchik that Costa mentioned. Yeah, it is closer to the reforestation site comparing to the other nursery in Bukorsko, which is closer to Sofia. So, how many years, how much time is needed to notice the results of reforestation, like the increase of bird diversity, plant diversity, and others? Well, I would say that at least 5 years, something like that. In Bulgaria, according to the legislation, when you create a young forest, you need to take care of it for 3 subsequent years. This means that for 3 subsequent years, you have to apply watering or taking the weeds out or fighting the invasive species or loosening the soil or something like that. And after that, you are able to really assess the success of what happened, and has the bird diversity on the plant diversity increased. So the 5th, the 6th year. A silly question, maybe. No silly there are no silly questions, so don't worry. But in a relatively wild area, why exactly are the so-called invasive species unwanted? Well, invasive species are unwanted, especially in wild areas, because they change the balance in the ecosystems. These invasive species are usually alien species. They are not typical for Europe, not typical for Bulgaria. And they are not associated with local organisms like animals or fungi. That's why they cannot offer to the local animals or fungi the food or the shelter or what they need. So invasive species are becoming huge problem, not only in Bulgaria, in the whole Europe. And a lot of money are put to fight with these species. And it is very unpleasant when you see that generally people do not fully understand the risks and the damage of these invasive species. For example, in Bulgaria, in the Danube, we have one reserve, Srebrna Reserve, which has been declared for the diversity of bird species there. And if you now go there and see, the situation is not that good anymore, and you see large areas covered from Fraxinus pennsylvanica, which is a North American species of ash, which replaces the local species of ash and covers huge areas. It totally changes the whole conditions of the ecosystem. I hope this answered to some extent to your question, but I can provide in addition more information about the role of invasive species and the risks associated with the invasive alien species stepping on Europe. Which invasive species you try to remove? Well, we try to remove Amorpha fruticosa, which is called in English indigo bush. We also try to remove Ailanthus altissima. Acer negundo. Acer negundo is a terrible, very invasive species. It is so difficult to get rid of it. And Fraxinus pennsylvanica. These were the 4 main invasive species that we try to remove by applying the Zarland method. I'm not talking about the herbaceous species, like Fituaca americana, for example, which is also very widespread along riparian areas. It's becoming a real disaster, as well as Falopia japonica. Terrible. Okay. Any other question? Or maybe somebody wants to just to comment or share opinion. You're welcome to do so, please.
Just, I would like to say something that, Nelly, thank you very much for your presentation. It was a very interesting presentation, and it is very important because actually what we don't have enough experience is conservation actions. Most of the cases we can understand that there is a problem, that an ecosystem is degraded, and some conservation actions are needed, but we don't have a lot of experience what to do in order to restore natural habitat types. So this is a very important example. And just a short question, you have spoken about the floods, the duration and the frequency. Actually, floods are very important, are part of the ecology of these ecosystems. And actually, most of these riparian ecosystems in Europe, because of river regulations of the dikes we are building, they are not flooded anymore. And I would like to ask if there is an effort in Bulgaria to reflood such ecosystems, so are to restore the main ecological process there.
Yes, thank you, Ioannis, for this question. There are some efforts made by Bulgaria, in particularly in areas near the Danube, in Kalimok-Brășlean, which is another project where WWF Bulgaria is participating in. We are trying to ensure some flooding for these areas in order to somehow imitate the natural processes. I have to say this is very expensive, costly action, and the success is still under question. This project is still in process of implementation, and we cannot say how successful we are so far. But if you are interested, I can send you more information about this, what we did, how we did it. It's very technical. Also, some hydrologists have been involved with this, and some facilities have been installed on the site in order to allow for waters from the Danube to come and flood particular area. I know this is regulated, these facilities are regulated, and there is a need of people to be involved all the time. So they can open the facility and let the water in, but afterwards they have to close it, and they have to take attention of the water levels of the Danube, etc. It's it's very complex and difficult, I must say, project. But I will be happy to share, in addition, more information about it. In the rest of the territory in Bulgaria, closely, for example, to Maritsa or Arda or other big rivers, no, such efforts have not been done. There was one attempt in Maritsa, but it was pretty unsuccessful, because one of the biggest problems along this river and the vegetation associated with it is the excavation of sand and gravel. These materials that are being taken out from the river beds for construction purposes. And this is a huge problem. It causes the underground level of the water to go down, very, very down, and thus many areas which are close to the banks, many riparian vegetation and forests which are close to the banks are being destroyed. They just die off, they dried out. And that's a huge problem. I don't know, in the Greek part of Evrus, is this
as far
common
as I know,
problem?
there was a project for reflooding riparian areas in Estos River, and it was quite successful. I have visited the areas that have been flooded, and in my opinion, they have been very much improved in terms of regeneration of natural species and of structure, of forest structure.
No,
but
that's great.
no anywhere else in Greece except Nestos to such reflooding has been applied. Only Nestos.
Yeah, I see. We can exchange more information about this. I'm also interested to learn more about this example in Nestos. There is another question. What do you think for the Paulovnia? Is it possible to be invasive around the rivers? Well, yes, Paulovnia, I think it is possible to be invasive, not only around the rivers, but also far, far away from them. I know that in some European countries, Paulovnia is included in the list of invasive species. Not yet for Bulgaria, but luckily it is not allowed for using Paulovnia for afforestations or reforestations on forest land territories. In Bulgaria, you can grow Paulovnia in agricultural lands. But still, this is risk because this species has not been studied well enough so far in Bulgaria. And we do not know how this species will behave in the times of climate changes. That's why I would not recommend using Paulovnia. And the other thing is that from many people that tried to grow Paulovnia for commercial purposes, they say that it is not that profitable as it was presented. So many questions for the Paulovnia. I would not recommend using it until we know much better the specifics of this biological species. Another question, I might have missed it, but how is the riparian reforestation work in Bulgaria to be continued? By that I mean where, how much land, and in what time frame are the plans for restoration? Good question, especially in those times. Well, there are some plans to continue. Also, WWF has such plans, but other stakeholders like the Southwestern Forest Enterprise in Bulgaria, we are planning to work on the southwestern part of Bulgaria for restoration of riparian forests and other priority habitats. We have developed a live project about this. We are still waiting for the feedback whether this live project will be financed or not. I don't recall the exact number of hectares right now. I don't know by heart, but something like 200 hectares around this figure are planned under this project. Of course, from WWF, we also plan to continue our work in the area of Maritsa and its tributaries, the smaller rivers which flow into Maritsa. But in this situation, I really don't know what to say. We are still working in Stambuliyski object and reforestation site, and we need to raise money in order to be able to continue and to extend our work. And I hope this will become possible also thanks to some European financial programs and other donor programs, because, for example, the United Nations has declared this decade as the decade for ecosystems restoration, and this includes also restoration of forests, no matter riparian or other types. So I believe that these big organizations, international donors, will find the way to secure financially this important work to be done, because it's for the good of everyone, for the whole planet. Also, if someone wants to help you with your work in Bulgaria, how can one help you in case you can make use of volunteer work? Yes, we would be very happy to continue our voluntary actions on the field. I hope the situation with coronavirus will get better in a few months and we will be able to go out and get back to the normal life with lessons learned and more intention. And of course, we are in WWF, we are having like donor campaign. And if someone wants to help, can just donate money. But yeah, so these are mainly the two ways. And the third way to help with our work is just to spread the word about this, to talk about this, to learn more about restoration of forests and the need to protect the forests. So basically, this is it for now. Okay. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this discussion. I'm a very social person, and yeah, I've been having very hard times the last week at home. So thank you guys, everyone, for being so active. Yeah. Zori, is it time to close? I don't see more questions.
If there are no questions, yes, we can finish. Thank you very much for your attendance here in Zoom, and please follow us and to understand where is the next Zoom webinar. In next week, we'll continue. Just to tell you, on 1st of April, there will be a webinar at 1 o'clock, key paradigms in nature conservation. The lecture will be tech experts, and when you follow us, you will see the news about it. Thank you very much for that you were.
And Zori, just to mention that, is it possible to put the links with the information materials somewhere in the event, or I don't know how to?
We will put the presentation in our edu.parks.bg, and you can see all materials that Neli made for this Zoom, for this webinar. You can see in our website.
Okay, so the links will be accessible from the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. And stay
Bye,
safe.
everyone. Stay safe and healthy.